If you're feeling that editing is sucking away your life, come here, I have some tips for you. Let's start with a simple one. Put your files, footage, graphics, whatever you're using, inside an SSD on your computer. Do I have to explain why? Really? Now let's dive into some settings inside of DaVinci Resolve. Go in the upper left corner where it says DaVinci Resolve and click on Preferences. And here in GPU processing mode, select CUDA if you have an NVIDIA graphics card or OpenCL if you have AMD. Check Use Neural Engine Optimization on NVIDIA if you have an NVIDIA card, of course. And in GPU selection, be sure to select your main GPU. Under the User tab, in Project Save and Load, be sure to have checked Live Save. This can save you a lot of time because it's saving your project every time you do something. So if DaVinci crashes, you can open back your projects in the same spot you were before. Those were some settings for the program itself. Now let's dive into some project settings. Let's go under File and Project Settings. Here we have a lot of settings that can help us saving some time. Timeline format is our default settings for the timelines that we are creating in this project. Even if I'm planning on delivering a 4K video, I like to set my timeline resolution to 1080p. And here's why. First of all, since my timeline is in 1080p, also my preview is going to be in 1080p, and this can help to alleviate some stress on our workstation. Second but most important, DaVinci doesn't scale in a destructive way our footage. So, even if I have my 4K footage inside a 1080p timeline, I can export it in a 4K native resolution just by upscaling back my timeline to 4K just before exporting. This because, as I said, DaVinci Resolve doesn't scale in a destructive way your files, so when your timeline will be scaled back to 4K, also your video will be. In timeline and playback frame rate, set the same frame rate of your footage. If you don't have a Blackmagic Design external monitor, you can skip completely video monitoring. Optimize media proxies and cache can help smooth your experience in editing. But what are proxies and optimized media? Well, they are a copy of your file that it's easier to edit. But let's make a step back. You are most likely editing an MP4 video that is coming straight up from your camera or your phone. These videos are in a format or codec that is highly compressed in order to save space, and while those files are good for streaming and for, of course, saving space, they are very bad to edit because not every frame is fully rendered. Let me explain. Let's say that you have a static background and an object moving in the foreground. The background, since it's static, is going to be rendered out every, let's say, 5 frames, while the object moving is going to be rendered every frame of your video. This is bad for editing because in order to give you the full frame preview back, your computer have to decode and calculate and put together back those images. Proxies can be generated in a codec that's uncompressed, so the final file will be a series of pictures, and in 1 second there will be as many images as your frame rate. This creates a larger file, but it's easier to edit because it requires no extra work from your computer to display you every single frame. You can create both high or low resolution proxies depending on your needs and hardware. Keep in mind that proxies are generated for your entire footage. So if you struggle with just one clip in your timeline, generate an optimized media. Optimized media is a particular function of DaVinci Resolve that allows you to create something like a proxy, but it's not in a video format. Remember that proxies and optimized media are rendered before the effects that you put in your timeline, so they won't help if you have problems with heavy effects. For this you have render cache, and render cache happens to be in the same format as optimized media. Keeping this in mind, you can use proxies, optimized media and render cache to have a smooth experience inside your timeline. Here in the optimized media and render cache panel you can set the quality and resolution for those files. So since my hardware doesn't have any problem handling the files that I usually edit, I tend to not use proxy or optimized media, but I use render cache from time to time. Here I like to keep the resolution to original, so my proxies and optimized media will be still in 4K. And as format I like to use DNX HRHQ. If you're not editing the next blockbuster, you don't need anything higher than that. But if you still have problems in your timeline, you can choose SQ, that stands for standard quality. Here in working folders we can set up where we want to generate those files. You want them on an SSD, as we said at the beginning of the video, And keep in mind that those files are going to be very large, so you want to delete them from time to time. So keep them in a surface level folder inside your SSD. Now that we have done with master settings, let's go to color management. If you want to do some color grading for your videos, I highly recommend to set timeline color space to DaVinci White Gamut and your output color space to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 if you want to deliver for YouTube. Now that we have done here, let's go to the three dots up here and save these current settings as a preset. As you can see, I already saved mine, and another thing that you can do is set your preset as a default. This way you don't have to choose a preset every time you open DaVinci Resolve. 99% of editing is cutting, so why lose any time using your razor tool when you can cut super fast? But how, you may ask? Well, it's pretty simple. This is your best friend. I don't like to move my hands more than necessary, so I set up my keyboard shortcut in order to have the tool I use the most under my fingertips. So Q ripple deletes everything before my playhead, and E everything after. Ripple delete is when you delete a clip and everything else shifts back in place. But now we have Q and E. What about W? Well, W, it ripple deletes a clip that you select. Yes, but how to make a cut? You can press S and cut every clip under your playhead. Or if you want, you can select a single clip and cut only that. Then you have A to go back to the normal selection tool, also known as the arrow, and D to activate or deactivate a clip. I also set up Ctrl Q and Ctrl A to select all the clips before and after the playhead, so you can easily move things around. Now let's go to the settings that you will change more frequently. Now, here in DaVinci Resolve, go to Playback and check Use Optimized Media if available, and then in Proxy Handling go and check Prefer Proxies. This way DaVinci Resolve will use those files instead of the original, and this can help performance. In Timeline Proxy Resolution you can set full, half or quarter. You can change this at any time and it won't affect anything else, not even exporting. Most of the time clicking on half it's more than enough to have a smooth playback. Now let's go to Render Cache and set it to User. This way DaVinci Resolve will use the settings that we have set up in the project. Let's jump to Fusion Memory Cache and set it on On. This will help us if we are using Fusion effects. Now let's jump in the Color tab. In the Color page, I highly recommend you to use a fixed node tree structure in order to get consistent results and also to speed up your work. You can save a structure like this by going on your preview, right-click and select Grab Still. This will create a copy of your nodes that you can apply on all your clips. And if you're in a studio like me, you can save your still after you have done your color grading, so you don't have to start from scratch every time. Remember that nodes are flowing into each other in order, so if you have a heavy effects like noise reduction, put it at the beginning of the sequence. This way you can activate Node Cache by right-clicking on the node and selecting Node Cache On. This way the effects will be pre-rendered, improving your playback. Every time that a node is cached, it's going to have a blue text, and since nothing is happening before this node, this will remain cached. But if we cache a node and something happens before, that node needs to be recached. We can see that our clean node is cached because it's blue, but as soon as I make an adjustment here, it becomes red. And every time I make an adjustment, it will be recached. Let's see another example. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, leave a like, a comment and please subscribe. Bye!